Thank you all for being here. I cannot believe I get to talk to such an amazingly talented group of people today in front of all of you. Let's jump right in with the beginning of the production process with Jazzy. As a reality TV casting director, what key qualities do you look for in a contestant, and how do you balance authenticity with viewer engagement, especially when you're on comedic projects like for Dropout?
Yeah, so when I first started, when it comes to the casting process, I really make sure that I'm looking for people that you can see yourselves in when you're sitting on that couch and you're pointing to that person like, oh, I'm also from Long Island. Oh, I'm also from, I love to eat cereal. I make sure I put the milk in before the cereal. I don't actually do the opposite. You want to see yourselves in these types of people, right? So when I am making sure that I'm casting, I look for those people that normally don't have their stories being told on TV. So I look for people that maybe have disabilities, maybe people that are from different walks of life, people that are people from people of color. So I make sure that everyone is represented in the unscripted world. But when it comes to casting people from Dropout, we have a core team that we're working with. We already have Dropout talent. We have Brennan, we have Izzy, we have Grant, Vic, and we want to make sure these people are really connected when they come onto set, especially since they're doing a lot of improv comedy. So we really make sure that we're going through and really looking like at everyone's reels. What have they done recently? Will they mesh well with the talent that we currently have? But we also want to make sure that they're big enough to bring more eyes onto talent, and more eyes onto Dropout World, because at the end of the day, it's a smaller subscription platform, and we want to make sure everyone gets these amazing eyes on these fantastic talent. So it's a mixture of two different types of world, but it's really, really important that authenticity just bleeds through when it comes to the casting on the reality side and casting on the Dropout side.
Kelley, unscripted projects, so much is created in the edit. So when you're working on something like Vanderpump Villa, how do you take all of this raw footage and transform it into a storyline that people can be invested in and follow? And do you have an example of a storyline like that kind of evolved significantly through your work?
Yeah, so in unscripted television, as an editor, you do go through a ton of raw footage, but we also have a story department, and they are the front line who go through and they watch all the raw footage that comes in from production, and they also read the notes that production are giving. And from the raw footage that they watch, they're the ones who decide like what scenes go into what episode and the episode structure. And then as an editor, they pass us a string out that has a bunch of scenes, and so we kind of know the structure of the story going on, and we kind of know the structure of the series and what's going to be happening later in the series. And then as an editor, it's your job to really like make that footage sing. So for every scene I have, I go through and I watch all of the raw footage, and because I know like sometimes later like these people are going to hook up in 2 episodes down the line, you look for those little nuggets that you can add, like are they looking at each other lovingly, and can I like set up the breadcrumbs to see that later on they're going to end up having a romantic relationship. So we watch a lot of raw footage, and then we add the music and sound effects and all of that to really make it sing. And for Vanderpump Villa, one of the storylines that like really evolved was Lisa hired 2 servers that are from Las Vegas, and they're like amazing servers, but they happen to be exes. And so they were broken up when they arrived at the villa to start working for Lisa. And following their journey, like Marciano ends up hooking up with one of the guests, and Hannah, gets upset. And you just kind of see like how they evolve throughout the series and develop. So it's definitely very interesting in reality television watching those relationships develop.
The things you must see that don't make it onto air.
Oh yeah,
So much.
Moving to the world of scripted projects, Joaquin, you worked on Griselda. This is a biographical crime drama. It's very tense. It builds throughout the whole series. how do you, in editing, manage pacing and building something like that over the course of multiple episodes?
Well, for Griselda, was directed by Andy Baez, who had a relationship with already from Narcos Mexico, so I knew already kind of his shooting style. So we maybe had some conversations initially about maybe, how to, hold on certain shots, especially with Sofia Vergara's, first dramatic role, right? Really that was our focus with this series, highlighting that. But in the end, it's the footage. When you start getting those dailies, and you just start reacting to the performances, the camera movement, the directing, is when I start getting a sense of the rhythm and the pacing of a scene, and obviously the script and what it says. But it's a feeling, and my reaction to the footage and those performances, and when you want to stay on a close-up and knowing when it's time to cut, right? And I think it really is a feeling. It's in your gut. It's like the moment. It's like, all right, it's time to move on. It's time to see that reaction. And honestly, I'm also kind of constantly always kind of tapping my foot. There's like an internal clock, I think, that I have. Maybe it comes from my interest in music. I started playing the drums, and so there is that also inside where it's like it's a rhythm that you're just kind of feeling, and you just kind of tapping it out, and you know when it's time to move on to the next thing, and also watching it. That's why I love working in an office, collaborating with directors and producers. Is that kind of look at each other and you're seeing people react to your cuts and knowing what's working and what's not. Specifically with the pacing, you look at each other and like, all right, I think we've got to kind of pump the brakes or hit the pedal a little bit, and keep things moving. But it really is just a feeling.
Yeah. And Jeff, you've done Invincible, Transformers, Earthspark, both of which feature complex soundscapes with action sequences. These environments, they're animated, so there's no kind of everything is just made up for these worlds. How do you manage balancing the dialogue, sound effects, and even a score to make sure that these stories are as immersive as possible?
Well, immersive is sort of the name of the game, right? So all of us are trying to take you, the audience, on a journey. Like, that's why I watch film and TV programs, is because I want to be swept away. So the last thing you want is to be taken out of that. So as a sound mixer, we kind of, have a great job where we can kind of either nail that balance, or we can very easily pull you right out of it. Like, you're watching TV at home and you can't hear the dialogue because the music's too loud. And all of a sudden the illusion's over, right? The spell's broken. So we have kind of these rules as far as how we build it up. There's dialogue and music and sound effects. Dialogue's like the base of a pyramid, basically. It's got to be key. Everyone has to understand what's going on. And then we add the music, and that's going to bring a lot of the emotion, but it's still sort of second to dialogue. So the last thing actually that comes in is the sound effects design and build. And that's tricky on a show as big as Invincible or Transformers or many other action series. And also, my company, Boombox Post, we are a sound design and editorial company that basically, that's what we pride ourselves on, is really interesting, cool sound design. So of course, like, my instinct is to want to feature all that stuff as much as I can. But what I'll do to balance that out, once you get all the basics, right, the environmental stuff, the Foley, the kind of more subtle light touch stuff, is you'll kind of turn your brain on to a more story-focused approach. And at that point, it's scene by scene, but it's even moment by moment or beat by beat, where you're like, what is the one sound effect that's going to draw the audience into this? Or what's going to sell the moment here? Which punch sound effect do I want to feature amongst the 4,000 of them, or lead to with a big crescendo? Or which explosion is going to draw us off screen, to something that's happening? So it's sort of, like Joaquin said, there's a lot of instinct that gets brought into that over time, and we're all drawing from experience for that. But a lot of it is just focused on the story and making sure that those choices we're making aren't overwhelming, but they're, featuring and making it interesting for the audience.
And Emilio, for Descendants, Rise of Red, that you worked on, how do you use costume design to, kind of on the subject of immersion, like bring people into this world, build a world, invite an audience in? Were there elements that you focused on to make sure that the setting and the atmosphere came across in the costumes?
First of all, I want to give a shout out to everyone here who's wearing a costume. Woohoo! Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because I think costuming is very important for actors to get into the role. That's huge for them. For the Descendants specifically, color was very important. The rise of red. So that's her color, and she's the daughter of the Queen of Hearts. For Chloe, who's the daughter of Cinderella and Prince Charming, the blue of Cinderella is iconic. With Disney characters, we really went back to the DNA of who were the original person where this character came from. So Chloe, the blue was important. The red was important. Uma is in those sea colors because she's related to Ursula some way. So for us, it was very specific, and Disney is very, very, very on hands about everything. So everything has to get approved and triple approved. But for me, coming from theater, I design Broadway shows primarily. I know how quickly an audience member needs to identify a character visually. And I think we do that ourselves every day. By what you put on, you are really telegraphing to the world how you want to be perceived. And that's how I approached it. And the colors were all pre-approved by Disney, the producers, and people with higher titles than myself. But it was fun. It's fun to be able to work in a really constructed environment, because then you can't rely on your old tricks. You have to really work outside of the box, but still give the audience something to hang on to.
Yeah. And Scott, hi.
Hello.
Way down there. I know that you've had a relationship with Ultraman Rising director Shannon Tyndall for a while now, for a few projects. Can you kind of walk us through how having that relationship and working closely together shaped the musical direction of Ultraman?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I think a lot of you guys already know, a lot of it has to do with relationships, and it really is the way that all of these things get made. I was very fortunate to be working with an experimental group of storytellers and technicians and engineers at Google, a project called Spotlight Stories that was pushing the boundaries of VR storytelling from 2012 until 2019 or so. Shannon came in having just worked on Kubo and the Two Strings, and he had this incredible story that was about a cheap Star Wars knockoff Ice-Capade, where the music, he wanted it to sound like cheap Queen. And I was like, I think I can do that. And so we worked together and just became very, very close friends. Then we worked together again with Peter Ramsey on, I think, a really amazing Netflix series back in 2019, 2020, 21. Oh gosh, pandemic kind of ruined everything. It came out just last year, called Lost Ollie. And so I was working on Ultraman at about the same time. Back in 2020, actually, I started working on Ultraman. So that was a 4-year collaboration, which is very rare and is kind of what everyone dreams about, where you get to work, you're in the room with just a very small group of people, director, editor, writers, art directors, VFX supervisors at ILM, which were doing all this amazing work. And by getting to work on something so early in the process as opposed to just being part of post-production, my music influenced some of the animation. I was influenced by the original visual art, all the concept art. It was a very collaborative process that made the whole thing kind of work in a really special way. And there was a lot of sort of Breakfast Club vibes where everyone became, very close, and there was that sort of postpartum that we're still suffering from. I miss those guys, but it really felt like a situation where I think if you see the movie, it feels like family. Every frame of that movie feels somehow like family, and so it was great to work with people that genuinely felt like that.
Yeah. And Kelley, kind of on the subject of collaboration, on Vanderpump Villa, how do you, like, what is your collaboration like with the producers, directors, other team members? How do you all kind of work together to put a story together?
Yeah, especially on every like first season reality unscripted show, you're trying to find the style of the show with the graphics and music and pacing. So it's a very collaborative process. And on Vanderpump Villa, we were led by our executive producer of Post, Jacob Lane. So he's the one who's speaking to the network and, you know, knows the show that was pitched to them and knows exactly like what they're expecting. But then there's also a lot of trust from him and the Post team and the editors to really figure out and nail down the style. And then once we figure out the style for the show as an editor, it's your job to make sure that stylistically your episode is matching the rest of the series with like graphics and music and sound effects. So it was definitely very collaborative. We had an amazing music supervisor, Kate Rubino, and we went, you know, for every first season show I've worked on, it goes through some waves of how the show starts to sound. And so she was very instrumental in like gathering the different cues and because music really can change the tone of a scene, can change the feeling. And for Vanderpump Villa, we really wanted to invite the audience into this luxury world that Lisa Vanderpump, you know, set up in the south of France. And she had these like amazing guests with really like inspirational backstories that they were always there to celebrate like one major life event. So being able to like follow the guest stories and then also follow the drama between the staff members was just so fun to figure out and very, very collaborative.
Yeah. And Jeff, on an action show like Invincible, how do you approach just implementing and integrating the sound effects to make sure that all of the scenes are kind of hitting an audience as effectively as possible?
Well, when you're approaching, you know, a show as big as, you know, Invincible or Transformers or Spark, you kind of have a weight on your shoulders because you know there's a big audience out there. I mean, the Transformers audience, like you go to Comic-Con and there's just diehard people, you know, waiting in line for, you know, certain Transformers action figures and things like that. And Invincible's just got this rabid fan base. So for us, it's sort of interesting. You know, it's like this is script to screen, right? So it's the start of the process to the end of the process. So as a sound mixer, the very last thing that happens before it goes to screen is the mix. Like that's our responsibility to kind of put the frosting on the cake. So our job's actually really fun, but it's also really interesting because we have the visuals of all the people that came before us up on screen to inspire us, right? And like to decide what we're gonna put on screen, we've got hundreds of artisans that have already worked and put their blood, sweat, and tears into this project. And we work entirely in animation. So in the animated medium, you know, your imagination is literally as far as you can take it. So like Invincible, you've got Dan and Sean and the creative team who they're basically able to put the camera anywhere because it's animation. So the action sequences are like wild and crazy and kinetic, and that's why that show's so incredible. And Ant and Dale, who run Transformers, they're doing stuff with CG that like live action producers, it would make their head spin. Like you just can't do that stuff every day. Yeah. So the way we approach our sound design, our mix, is we basically take all that incredible work that's put in front of us, and we just kind of like, it's almost like Easy Street. We take inspiration from all of that and stand on their shoulders. And the goal there is just to make sure they're exceeding, you know, the expectations of the fan week to week. So we're just trying to do that for them and make sure that we do right by the team.
Yeah. And Scott, I mean, in terms of kind of coming from sound design, like how much do you think about the sound design of something that you're scoring? How do you work with the sound designer to make sure that you two are blending and not never like fighting?
Yeah, so my first sort of big job that kind of kick-started my career was working on a Pixar theatrical short back in 2007 called Presto. It came out before WALL-E. It ended up being mixed at Skywalker Ranch, which was an incredible experience. You really felt like everybody who worked on that was the best of the best, but I was kind of blown away. I have to say, like a little bit disappointed with the fact that you had, you know, everything that you hear is going to be, as Jeff was saying, you have dialogue, you have sound effects, you have music, and they're sort of compartmentalized. They're in different buildings, different people working on it. There's no collaboration between them whatsoever. And the mix ends up being kind of it can be a loudness war of just the composer wanting the music to be loud, the sound effects, the sound designer wanting the sound of, and it's of course, great mixers like Jeff have to fix that stuff and focus on story. But it still struck me as being like a big missed opportunity. So doing both, I am both a sound supervisor and a composer. I like to sort of force collaboration whenever I can. On Ultraman, I had the opportunity to work with Randy Tom, who is a legendary sound designer. His first gig was Apocalypse Now, for those who don't know, probably one of the most important films in the history of cinema, especially with regards to sound and editing. And he also did the sound for Iron Giant and The Incredibles. I mean, these are just some of the best movies ever made. And what a missed opportunity would be for the composer and sound designer to not collaborate. So how do you do that, though? What I did was anytime we had a full-length cut, I would call up Randy and Leffords at Skywalker and say, hey, let's spot the whole film together, just us. So I would be at Skywalker at this gigantic stage called the Stag. We would be spotting a very early version of the film together, and we would just have a conversation, composer, sound designer, supervising sound editor. And as a result, like, I would carve out entire sections of the film where I would be like, okay, sound effects here are my percussion section. I'm not going to put any cymbals in here, no drums. That's going to be the sound effects. I'm going to let Randy take over the scene, which is not a bad idea. And then he would have scenes he wanted to just have all music. And it was just an amazing opportunity to have this interdisciplinary collaboration between two people who just wanted to tell a story and didn't need to be loud.
I love that. I love the idea of sound effects as percussion too. That's super cool.
It works. Yeah,
Yeah.
you guys should try it too.
Yeah, that is awesome. Emilio, you touched a little bit on the colors of Descendants, Rise of Red, but with that and with other projects as well, like, how do you generally decide on things like that, and how much are you looking for symbolism in the costumes? And do you have examples from Descendants or other projects where you were trying to achieve something with that?
I think it's all symbolism in what we wear. I don't approach it so much my work as costumes. I approach it as clothing that people are wearing in a specific situation. I studied fashion design before I got into theater and now into film. So that's always my point of view. Let's start. These are people living in this real world. What are they wearing? But symbolism in The Rise of Red, the heart that Red has is huge because the mom is the Queen of Hearts, and how does she interpret the hearts was something that was collaborated on by like 30 people. That's the one thing that I learned from my humble Broadway career when you leap into the world of Disney Plus, is that it comes with a lot of people. And that's great because you get a lot of experience. And for me, as a Broadway designer, it's usually the director, myself, and the producer. The director and I come up with a look, the producer checks off on it, and we get going. For something like Disney Red, as I design it, originally I get the script, I look at it, my team, I usually have a team of 2 people, like an associate costume designer and someone that we call a swatcher, which is a person that's out in the market looking for fabrics. So I'm designing things that I can find. And if we don't find it, then we make it. But I design the first pass. It goes through the producers and the director. They get a look at it. Then it goes to the studio. And then they get a look at it, send notes. And especially for this project, Mattel created dolls out of the costumes. So then Mattel had their spin on what the costumes need to look like because they have to be able to produce them to look as close to the characters as possible. So the heart for Red is a symbol. Uma she's from the ocean, so there's like a tricorn pirate hat. And I did a lot of fringe because I wanted to have movement to it. Also, there's a lot of like antique burnished gold. My thinking was if you go to the bottom of the ocean and you find a treasure chest it's not pristine. It had barnacles on it, so I did barnacles on her boots, little things like that the audience may not get it, but it informs the character, so then my actor can perform even bigger. So that's the way we came up with certain symbols, but I also like to find what does the actor bring to the part. Because I'm not the type of designer that says, well, I can't be in a project like this, but you have to wear this because I say so, or this is what you're gonna wear. Because I think what that does is sometimes it creates a wall for the actor to be able to embrace the character. So the actors sometimes have their own personality they want to come in to, especially nowadays. Like hair is such a personal aspect of who you are as a person that just because you're doing a fantasy film like The Descendants, I cannot not have that component in my actors. So we had actors who required certain hairstyles, and you have to honor that. So it's very collaborative, but we are all reaching the same goal, and hopefully we can all get there at the same time. Did that answer the question?
Yes.
I tend to go all over the place.
Fantastically.
Don't ask me about color or costume. I just like go down the rabbit hole.
No notes. That was fantastic.
He's heard plenty of notes.
I know. They told me you got 2 minutes.
I'll leave the notes for Mattel. I have no notes. Jazzy.
Mattel tells me what they want, and I design it.
Jazzy, there's no shortage of people in the world that would love to be in an unscripted program. When you are making casting decisions, how do you ensure that you're reflecting, diversity, inclusion, both in terms of on-screen representation and maybe even behind the scenes as well?
It all starts with the team. The team that I compose can sometimes be a team of 12 for a casting team for unscripted, which is a lot of people. But there's also times where it's just me and maybe an associate. When I make my decisions, I make sure that I'm bringing in people that might be more experts in an area that I'm not an expert in. And I think that's what you then get on TV. That way everyone's reflected behind the scenes and then also reflected on the screen. I'm not a member of the LGBTQ community, but we want to make sure that person is seen on TV. So I will make sure that I hire someone from that community. Same thing with disabilities, same thing, from all different types of land. Because at the end of the day, it's a very collaborative process. I talk to my associates, I talk to my producers, I talk to the executive producers. They tell me, we really want to see this type of person, and the only way to make sure that we're doing it with care and responsibility is to have a team backing that.
Yeah. And Joaquin, every job in the entertainment industry is hard to get, I feel like. It's hard to start out. I know that you started the Hollywood Editing Mentor Program. Sounds like an incredible resource for people. Can you talk about why you wanted to do that and kind of what success in a mentee looks like to you?
Yeah, so Hollywood Editing Mentor, you can find it at hollywoodeditingmentor.com. I started it during the pandemic. And it's an online platform to provide guidance and support for aspiring, editors and I'd say post-production professionals, who want to work, whether it be film, scripted TV, reality, documentaries, anything, to just kind of pull back the curtain a little bit on the industry and honestly just show you a path to whatever you want to work on, right? And it comes from my personal journey of wanting to work in film and scripted TV. I grew up in San Diego in Chula Vista. I started working here in local news, Univision, Telemundo, Channel 10, and spent many years just kind of working on different types of projects and didn't know how to make it to say Hollywood. And actually, I used to volunteer here at Comic-Con as a kid. And so I honestly got the email about this. I was like, yep. But I mean, it's just, it comes from that, from my experience of trying to figure it all out. And when I got to Hollywood, it was through the support of a community, the post community, which has been great in LA, and also mentors that have guided me and shown me the way. And so I wanted to give back to the community by creating this platform, And it's just me, honestly, talking about, say, how to join the union, how to become better at networking, also get into the kind of, how to set up my projects, things like that. And I also then started a podcast, a Hollywood Editing Mentor podcast, where I interview, post-professionals, editors, some that are here today, I have it on the show, to share their experiences of how they've been able to get, to where they are today. And so in the hopes that people learn from their journeys, right? And so I just think it's important, one thing I've learned is that, you can't be out there just doing it by yourself. You have to find help from mentors, the community, and just put yourself out there. And like I said, the post community is great, very helpful. And now I'm just trying to provide that for people and just answer questions. People, we just have questions trying to figure this out, honestly. And we just want answers, simple answers. And so that's what I'm trying to do here through this platform and the podcast. And of course now that has gone on to, doing courses and an online community, so many things. It keeps growing. And so just hope it gets bigger and bigger, and help people out.
Awesome.
That's amazing. On that subject, I kind of want to ask everyone, I don't know how you want to jump in, like one by one or down the line or whatever, but do you each have kind of advice that you would give to somebody who wants to enter your specific side of the industry?
Should we just go down the line?
Yeah, let's do that.
For me, I always, getting into costuming is not easy because the work is not easy. You're usually the first one on set and the last one to leave. But I always recommend that if you're interested in that art form, find a costume designer that you enjoy their work and try to reach out to them personally. Maybe you can intern. I take on interns, I take on assistants, and start there. Don't be afraid to send your portfolio or your reel to everyone. All you need is one yes. What did Gaga say? You got 99 no's, and all you need is that one yes. So you gotta keep going, you can't stop. If you really, really want it, you have to put yourself out there and not be shy about it. The shy one does not get the gig.
Ooh, that's a hard to follow up. I always say the next step that you take is the greatest step you'll ever take. And I live by that 100%, and I think that's what people need to do if they want to get into casting. A lot of people, when it comes to unscripted, are you really good at social media? Are you the friend that will, if someone's boyfriend is cheating on them and you can find out all that information about them in a matter of like 5 seconds, you're probably great for reality casting. We are looking for people that can find just anyone, the needles in the haystack. So if that's you, that's reality casting. But for on the other unscripted world with comedy, do you love going to comedy shows? Do you know up and coming comedians? Are your friends comedians? Do you do improv? Like, those are the type of people that you constantly just want to have a Rolodex just running in your head. And if that's the type of people that you're like, oh, I know this person's good for this, you're great for casting as well. And the best way to do that is just reach out to us. We're always looking for people to help out on projects. I pride myself in hiring brand new people that have never done casting before, because I wish I had someone like that for me when I was starting, because I just kind of got thrown to the wolves, and I was like, they're like, figure it out. But I like to mentor people and get people to the places that they really strive to become.
I think I'm going to speak to sound specifically just because Emilio's answers was so good in general for everybody. I think that's like great advice for everyone, and Jazzy's gotten into the casting side of things. So, for also Emilio, my daughter's going to lose her mind when she realizes I was on a panel with someone who worked on Descendants. Like, she's going to be so excited. So, but yeah, so it's really about not being afraid to put yourself out there. So specifically for my company, Boombox Post, we have an apprenticeship program, and boomboxpost.com. Hopefully this gets reshared and lots of people can find this resource, but you just apply online, just like, Joaquin's program. Like, find something like that and put yourself out there, give your resume to as many people as possible. And specifically what I would say, speaking to representation, is that it's really important that you don't count yourself out for who you are. who you are is the most important part of why you're going to get that job. And our company, I started with my business partner, Kate Fine, and we're just about to hit 10 years in about a couple weeks. Wow. And we are 50%, we started the company being 50% or more female and non-binary hires. And so we started with that mission, and we grew. We're currently the largest animation-only sound company in Los Angeles. So like, it wasn't a hindrance, it wasn't a bug, it was an actual feature. And so if that's you and you're out there and you're like, oh, the sound industry is 5% female, how could I possibly get a leg up? Well, no, there's people out there that want you, and so have the confidence to just put yourself out there, hit the resumes as hard as you can, and you will find the right fit. You just have to be patient, and you have to be aggressive.
Yeah, I can agree more with the putting yourself out there. I think along those lines, the networking. I mean, this industry is built on relationships. It's so important to master the art of networking, really understand how to properly do it. And it is about building relationships, not just going to say a mixer and asking for a job, right? Don't do that. It's really understanding that, really getting good at it. It took me a while to really figure that out. And also, one thing that held me back a lot from achieving my dream, say working in film and scripted TV, was making it about the money. I was just out there taking editing jobs. I've been doing this now for 20 years, working in broadcast media. And for many years, I just took jobs because they offered me a good, paycheck. I was all right, I'll take it. But it's not what I really wanted to do. And so it wasn't until I met two people that gave me that advice. It's like, don't make it about the money. Like, make it about, if you want to work in film, get close to that community, those people doing the type of work that you want to do, and work on the right projects. And that meant me going back, and even though I was an editor, I took a step back, as they say, and worked in low budget indie features, right, where I could barely pay my rent. But I was making films, and I was super happy. And so, yes, then I started getting that experience, and then, yeah, sure, maybe the money came later, right? That's fine, but don't get distracted by that, because it's very easy to just kind of go down this other path that'll distract you from the stuff that you want to work on.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I totally agree with what everyone is saying with networking. To become an editor, it's such a skill set that you also kind of have to learn on the job. So how I got into editing is I started actually as a casting PA, and then in Detroit, and then when I moved to LA, I reached back out to the same company, and I got hired as a logger. And then from there, oh my gosh, you're on a show, right? And then you see how things are working in the workflow, and my advice would be to find the best editor on the show, the person that you love what they do, and ask to sit in with them. And I had so many mentors along the way that I would sit in while they were editing. They would tell, because as an editor, you're making 100 million micro decisions a day, and you're like, should I add this? Is this part of the footage? What angle? What sound effect? What stem of the music? So I would just listen to the best editor on the show tell me why they're making the decisions that they're doing. Even if you're on a show and you see the scene that someone edited that you really love, if you even look at the timeline and you pick apart how they did that, what sound effects they used, what music, how they separated out their dialogue, or did they pad it with, some ambient sound or whatever, if you just pick apart an editor's timeline too, that's very helpful into learning and growing and becoming a better editor.
I just have one thing to add, which is what not to do, which is to try to do everything yourself. A lot of people start, they want to write, they want to direct, they want to edit, they want to costume design, they want to mix, they want to do the music. It's a nice way of learning how to do a little bit of everything, but what really works is something that Jazzy actually talked about when she was talking about her process, and I hope you guys picked up on it. She realized a moment where the scope of her expertise ended, and she wanted to work with someone who was actually better at a specific thing, which is an opportunity to learn and to collaborate with other people. And if you guys hear one thing, I think that's a really big one, is trying to do everything yourself is kind of an amateur move. Finding the limits of your expertise and finding reasons to collaborate with other people is going to open up so many doors, because that dumb little project that seems like nothing, 5 years later, that person is working on an amazing project. And because you didn't try to do everything yourself, you tried to collaborate, that person became an editor on another project. They called you in. You had that next opportunity. So don't do everything yourself. Collaborate.
If I can just add one last thing, you have to love what you want to do, because that's what's going to get you over the years and years and years and years that it takes to get to where you want to be. Because I can tell you about many, many, many lean years where I worked selling shoes, I worked at a massage place, I worked wherever I had to do so I can design at night or during the day. So you have to have that love for it deep down inside, that you're willing to sacrifice everything. And I think that's, if you don't have that drive, find something that you have that drive for, and then that's your mission.
Yeah.
Nice.
That is all absolutely incredible advice. I think with the disclaimer that you've all clearly earned very long, very nice vacations. Maybe we can go down the line again. Like, what's next for all of you? Is there something else you're all working on right now that we can all check out next?
Yeah, I'm waiting for my next film. That's the thing. This Disney Plus film was my first big studio film. So now I'm like, what happens next? No, but I have theater shows. I have a new musical on the life of Muhammad Ali that's going to go in Chicago next year. I'm doing immersive work now. It's a big buzz in theater where you actually go into the space and you're living the experience. You're not just sitting and it's being told to you. You're actually in it. So I have a couple of those in New York and a big one with a big composer that's going to get announced in a couple of weeks. So, I dabble in my theater will always be my theater, like my day gig. And then film and TV is what I'm like really passionate and pushing towards.
I have my own production company that highlights underrepresented voices.
Yay.
Yay! And that's called Forced Perspective. So I am working on 2 features on that side, which is very exciting. One's a female writer and one is a black man. And
Need a costume designer?
I'm
Networking.
I network. And then I am also working a lot with Dropout. If your Monet Slumber Party just premiered last week. If you haven't watched it, watch it now. But I also am currently working on the new season of Game Changer, and I'm developing a couple new shows with them. So that's very exciting.
Hey.
We just launched Exploding Kittens on Netflix, which they're not really great. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. And I'm currently working on season 3 of Invincible, which is I was just working on it yesterday. So very fun.
I recently wrapped a gig for Apple, a new series. Just helped out for a bit, and so of course now just trying to explore other types of projects, maybe different genres. It'd be great to maybe do something like comedy, I've always done drama. It's cool to switch to comedy. And also, yeah, like I said, the podcast. I mean, it's tough to do both, honestly. It's a lot of work. But just looking forward to bring on new guests and keep growing the platform.
I have worked on 2 other unscripted series that are so juicy, and I'm like waiting for. They're just not announced yet, so I can't say what they are. But when they are announced, I'm excited for how everyone's going to react to them. They're pretty good. So if you follow me at Kelley Tour on Instagram, I will tell you what those juicy shows are going to be. But I'm excited for everyone to see them.
I'm really excited to be working again on some animated shorts, which is how I started. It's really fun to get back into that format. Working on a Disney pilot, NDA'd, can't talk about it. I know. Hoping to be working on an Ultraman 2. Come on, everybody. Don't you want to see that? Yes, I thought so. And I'm sound designing a surgical robot.
What? That's amazing. Well, I think that is everything that we have today. Please give a hand for our panelists. Emilio, Jazzy, Jeff, Joaquin, Kelley, Scot. Thank you to Impact 24 PR for having us. Thank you to Comic-Con for having us. To all of you for hanging out. Impact 24 has one more panel coming up next with creatives from One Piece, Only Murders in the Building, Gen V, and more. So please hang out. You don't want to miss that. And, follow Impact 24 PR on socials. This will be up if you want to watch it again. And thank you so much. Have a great Comic-Con.
Thank you.